Hi everybody, Pat Huntoon from Technique Junkies here, and today I'm making some really cool mono printing pieces using stencils and watercolor paper and regular paper, and it makes several different pieces of paper. We're not using a gel press or anything of the sort. We're just going to be using some Nuvo Embellishment Mousse and some Nuvo Glimmer Paste. I'm going to be using gold, and just watercolor paper and regular paper, a paint palette and a paintbrush. So it's pretty easy what we're doing, but you don't need any special tools for it, except for this applies the materials there, but you don't need a gel press or anything else. So let me just show you the unfinished piece before I put it all together, something else. It's kind of a grungy, kind of cool look. Can you see all that glitter on there in the corners? Little tiny triangle stencil to create this doubled piece, but I think you can kind of see the glitter and the shine from the metallic mousse. It also made this piece, which it was kind of just a byproduct, but you can see how shimmery and shiny that is. So I'll use that on something. This was just something I discovered when I was playing with my mousse. The first thing I'm going to do is I want to create an ombre effect with my mousse. So I'm going to be taking 3 mousse colors out using a palette knife. And the first color I'm using here is Persian Red, which it doesn't look very red, I know, but once we get some color in there, I think you're going to be shocked at how red this really is. I'm just going to put a bit in there, a bit of burnished bronze in the center here. And you notice how empty these all are? When I do demos at shows or make and takes at shows, people use my product all the time. And as they get low, I put them into my personal stock, which is why some of these are really low. This is burnished bronze, burnished bronze Nuvo Embellishment Mousse. This was Persian Red Nuvo Embellishment Mousse. And this one is Fresh Copper. And the names, you can find them right above the barcodes on the back. Fresh Copper Nuvo Embellishment Mousse. Ooh, I took this out of my classroom. This is nice and full. Okay, so we're going to put a little bit in there. And then we're going to add some water to each of these. Okay, so now I put water into all 3 of my palettes. I neglected to mention before that we're going to be using a stencil too. I think I mentioned it when I was pulling the pieces out and showing the pieces. But this is the stencil I'm going to use. I have no idea if the stencil is a good one to use here, but I know you do need open areas, and there's quite a few open areas here. So I'm going to stop talking while I mix these together so I can speed it up for you, and you don't have to watch me do it in real time. Okay, so now you notice that I mixed those up, and I'm going to use a color progression here. This is the burnished bronze, the Persian Red, and the Fresh Copper. So what I'm going to do is I want to create a little base here. So I'm just going to use my water brush. Every time I dip it in there, I'm going to stir it. And I'm just going to create a base. I'm going to put it in 3 separate sections, if you will, creating base here, because I want to get this kind of wet and kind of colored. So I'm going to use quite a bit of water with these and create a base and just brush it on. I'm going to overlap them somewhat onto the Persian Red. And you notice I left some goobies in the bottom there. We want, goobies probably isn't a great word, but you get the idea. There's little pieces in the bottom because I'm going to be using my finger at some point here. Put that guy back in there. Get in there. And get this nice and original color here. So now I have a ombre look going on there. So we're going to put the stencil over the top of that. And this is where we start to use our finger and a little bit of the brush. Back over it again with the brush, because I want to keep this wet. Keep it nice and wet. So I'm going to go over it with the brush in thirds again. Thirds again. Okay. Now I'm going to use my finger on these. I'm going to pick some of that stuff off. Can you see? I had some on the bottom there. I'm going to pick some of that out because I want to use that. I actually want to use that and get this nice and colored here. I'm going to go over this and over it a few times. I'm going to get a lot of color. And what I'm actually doing is 2 things. I'm actually coloring the bottom of this, so we're going to have a cool look on the bottom, but I'm actually coloring the stencil too. Okay, so I'll get that nice in there and then just lift it straight up. Doesn't look like a whole lot, but it will, I promise you. And then I'm going to pull the stencil over, and I'm going to flip the stencil. Actually, we'll do it this way first, and I'm going to push the color from the stencil onto the background. See how I'm pushing it? It's a little bit drier now because most of the water stayed with the stencil. But you can really see that ombre look starting to happen, and just lift it off. Okay, so now I have this mono printed, I guess you can't really call it mono printed, but this ombre look using the stencil. It's kind of a grungy, cool little look. So I'm going to set that to the side. I'm going to go back to the stencil. And now I'm going to get this a little bit more stencil-y. I'm going to go back over it with my fingertips. No more product, just my fingertips. Go back over it. And you can really see that look coming to the forefront. I'm going to wipe the back of that stencil off now. Actually, I'm going to wipe both sides of that stencil to get the product off, this product off of it. And we're going to move on to the second product. So I probably should heat that with a heat tool because it's much wetter than the first one I did, but we will. We'll go back over it. And dry so fast. I'm just going to dry it real quick and then I'll be right back to you. Okay, let's get to the next step here. I want to replace this stencil right back over this, and this is a repeating stencil, so it's fairly easy to do because there's so many repeats on it, but it's just tricky finding exactly how I had it when I have a lot of it covered. So I think that's pretty exact, just right over the top. And then we're going to be using the Nuvo Glimmer Paste. I chose to use gold. I probably could have chosen to use red or silver and gotten a pretty cool effect too. And this, I'm just using my finger. And it is a paste. It's very thick. You can see how thick that is. If you've watched me work with this before, it has a nice thickness to it. So this, I am just rubbing this all over. I'm going to get a thin coat on this. I am not going to be using a thick coat. Actually, I think I'll pull a little bit out with my, just to make it easier to grab. I'm just going to thin this out. The idea is not to make the whole thing glitter, just covering up that mousse, but to make it kind of cool there. So we're going to do this over the top of this one. And then I'm going to lift it. Oh, look at that. So we have the triple look there, and then we have glitter all over where the stencil goes. That's really cool looking. And then we're going to go back over this piece, the drier piece. And again, we're going to line this up, and oh, this is going to be really cool because there's white spots on this one where, because it was drier on dry, there's some white edges. So first I'm just going to push whatever's on the stencil on there, and then I think I'm going to do the same thing and just push this through the stencil with my fingertips and get this cool glittery look over the top of this. I love layering products, especially easy products like this, easy to use products like this, products with color and a lot of shine and shimmer to them. And these two pieces will have metallics and it will have glimmer. Can't go wrong with that. Every girl needs to shine a little bit. I probably used a little more glimmer than I wanted, so I'm just going to kind of wipe it off with my fingertips a little bit. Oh, so very cool. Okay, so quite glimmery with some color in the background. Very cool. I'm a whole mess of cards with the other pieces. So for the triangle pieces I showed you in the beginning, I just used the Throw Kindness Like Confetti. It's called Throw Kindness, and I'll put a link at the bottom of this so you can see how pretty and shiny and shimmery that is. With the opposite piece, the base piece that was on watercolor paper, I just used it as a border here with the Born to Golf or Let's Play Around set, and you can see how it can be used in a very masculine way. And this was the base piece, the one I did in the on the watercolor paper, and I used the Shine Like Sunbeams set on that. And again, I'll have a link to the actual name on there, but it's pretty piece. And finally, the last piece is Keep Believing, and I love the way this turned out. And you notice I did all the pieces very monochromatic. I had the pieces all done in very monochromatic colors, and I just thought it would be very appropriate if I continue that monochromatic look, just using several pieces of paper to create all the cards. Thank you for stopping by today in our exploration of embellishment mousse with a little glimmer paste, some stencils, and some water. I hope you learned something. I had a good time. I hope you did too. Thanks a lot. See you next time.